Hey YouTube, this video is going to be a quick little overview on reloading for the 357 SIG cartridge. One of my newer subscribers told me that he was having some problems chambering some of his 357 SIG reloads, and well, I just want to make it known that I'm not an expert reloader and I only have a few months, but if I can help someone else out, I'll do my best. Please take this video and the techniques in it with that mindset that I'm not an expert. But anyways, I'm going to skip some of the parts that were covered in my other handgun reloading, that long video on 45 ACP, to try to keep this video from getting too long. So anyways, I've got a batch of 19 357 SIG cartridges here. These have been fired twice, once as factory loads, and I've reloaded them once, and they seem to still be in pretty good shape. No obvious signs of overpressure, and yeah, as you can see, the primers look to be in pretty good shape. So the first thing that I do is you kind of have to treat this as not just a pistol cartridge, but also like a bottleneck rifle cartridge. So the first thing that I do is I use this Imperial sizing die wax for my lubrication needs, and I just put a very thin layer of this sizing wax just on the body of the case. Just a thin film all around. I try not to put any on the neck, because all of the current 357 SIG die sets, except for the Dillon, I believe, are stainless steel. They're not carbide, so you do have to lubricate these cases. And you don't have to use the sizing wax. You can use regular lubricant if you'd like, but I use the Lee dyes because they're not very expensive and they're good quality. This step, does take a little bit of time, but compared to spending, I think it's over $100 for the Dillon set, it's worth a few extra seconds of lubricating and wiping them off to save some money. So I'm going to go ahead and lubricate the rest of these off camera to save some time, and then I'll show you how I resize them. Okay, so now that we've got our clean brass lubricated, it is ready for resizing. I don't, some reloaders will use 40 Smith & Wesson dies to resize for the 357 SIG cases. I don't know how they do it. I think they have to back the die out a little bit. I'm sure it can be done, but I just don't know how to do it, and I just stick to the basics. I use a dedicated set of Lee 357 SIG dies, Lee part number 90270. All right. I've got my resizing die in there. Like I said earlier, 357 SIG is kind of like a hybrid pistol and bottleneck rifle cartridge. In this step, you treat it like a pistol in that you don't overcam the resizing, the press for the resizing operation. So you just want to make sure that the sizing die just touches the shell holder, and that's it. You don't do an extra quarter turn or whatever. So I've got my cases lubed up, and let's just go ahead and resize a few. And of course it will deprime at the same time. Alright, so we've got our primer expelled, and we've got the case resized. I'll just do one more, and then I'll do the rest off camera to save some time. And remember, you don't need a whole lot of that lubricant on the case. There goes the old primer. And there's our new resized case, ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and do the other 17 cases. And then what you have to do next, I talk about this in more detail in the 45 ACP video, but you just you got to measure all these cases and make sure they're within spec. For the 357 SIG, the maximum case length is 0.865 inches. Now, I use these for target shooting. I do want them to be accurate, but I'm not going into competition with them. So at this point, I just want to make sure that they're all under 0.865 inches. If they're over, I'll trim them down to the recommended length. But so your next step would be to just check every case, especially with a high pressure cartridge like 357 SIG. These things will expand, and they have to be trimmed periodically. So go ahead and do your trimming operation, make sure that they're within spec, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay guys, I measured all the cases and they were all within spec, and none of them were over the maximum allowable length. Yeah, these Spear Lawman cases are really good quality, so I don't have to trim any of them. That extends my brass lifespan. And now I'm just going to go ahead and prime my cases. Today I'm just using the regular Federal small pistol primers, and that's what you want to use for 357 mag, small pistol, non-magnum. So go ahead and, if you had to trim, go ahead and trim any long cases to bring them back within specification. And now just go ahead and prime your cartridges however you prefer to do it, whether it's with a little flip arm on the RAM, or as part of a progressive or a turret. I use the RAM priming unit myself from RCBS. I'm going to go ahead, turn the camera off, prime these cases, and I'll be right back. And just go ahead and prime however you prime. Okay, now that we've got the cases nice and primed, the next step is to expand. Meaning that we have to flare the mouth of the case just enough to easily seat the bullet. You don't want to overdo it with the flare, because it will shorten the case life. So I've got my expanding die set up. Again, this is a Lee product on an RCBS press. I don't have any special tips for you here, except pretty much just read the instructions and follow them to a T. So let's go ahead and see what happens here. Oop, see? Not good. I just buckled that case. So I have to back this out quite a bit more. So that case is no good. Let me back this out another half a turn or so and see what happens. Alright, so that's a lot better. I had to back the die out another 3/4 of a turn or so, and that's good. I didn't buckle this case. Mistakes can and will happen during reloading, so it's not the end of the world. Let's go ahead and try a couple more and see how these turn out. Sorry about the bad light, guys. It's at the end of the day and I'm losing sunshine. But yeah, hopefully you can see that I've got that little flare there, and that should be plenty for seating our bullet. So I'll go ahead and do the rest of these off camera. I'll just do one more for you. If you have one of these dies where there's the little attachment here to charge the case, you can go ahead and do that at this time. I usually just do it separately. So what I'm going to do after I finish expanding the rest of these cases is I'm going to go ahead and charge them with powder. Today I'll be using Blue Dot, about 10 grains, but make sure you check your reloading manual and do what it says. I've used 10.0 grains of Blue Dot before. It was a nice powerful load, and it didn't overstress the cases. So there you can see it. There's my flared little mouth there, and I'm going to go ahead and charge these cases, and I'll be right back to show you bullet seating. Okay, now that the charges have been thrown and these cases have been filled with gunpowder, in this case Blue Dot from Alliant, we are ready to seat the bullets. Now, when it comes to 357 SIG, yes, it is basically a 9mm bullet. However, it is recommended that you use 9mm bullets that are specifically designed for 357 SIG. And in this case, I'm using the Spear TMJ plinkers. As you may or may not know, the 357 SIG cartridge was developed by SIG and Federal, and Federal is basically the main parent company of Spear and RCBS. The corporate parent is Alliant Tech Systems, ATK. But basically, it's a Federal design cartridge, so I'm using Federal products. And you don't have to do that, of course, but do try to get bullets that are designed specifically for 357 SIG. In this case, I'm using 125 grains. These will also work for 38 Super, but you do get better results with bullets that are specifically for this caliber. So anyways, got the 125s. I went ahead and I did the first one. I got it to the recommended overall length of 1.135. This one's just a little short, 1.133. Here's how I set up my bullet seating die. Well, there's a couple of ways that you can do it. The first way is to just follow what the instructions say, and you put the die all the way down until it contacts the mouth of a case that's in the shell holder, and then what you do is you just back this bullet seating plug up. I usually just back it up all the way so that you don't accidentally overseat, which I did with my first bullet. And you just back it up all the way, and then you can just seat it, see how long it is, and progressively twist this thing down until you get to the overall length that you want. Alternatively, what you can do, if you have one available, is just take a factory round, measure it, and put it in there, and then you can just save a lot of that hassle, get yourself close with the factory round. I measured this particular cartridge was 1.124, so if you were to use that, it would be too short for our overall length of 1.135, but you could still use this. You just put it in there, get the seating die down to where it touches where you feel that first bit of resistance, and then just back this up a little bit so you can get close to 1.135. You can do that as well. Either method works. I wasted another, well, I didn't waste this one. I'm going to have to pull the bullet because I overseated my first case. But anyways, again, like I said, I'm not an expert by any means, you know. I do make mistakes, but the important thing is to catch them before you take them to the range and have some, you know, God forbid a catastrophic failure with your gun and your ammo. So this part is just pretty much straightforward. I've got my overall length pretty close. Just going to go ahead and seat my bullets. Let's measure this. Bam! That'll do. That will do. And I saw that one of the factory rounds was at 1.124, so I know I have some leeway. I just want to avoid going over 1.135. So I'm going to go ahead and seat the rest of these bullets in, and then I'll show you my final step for reloading 357 SIG. And I think it's an important one, especially if you're a novice like myself. It's just it's a small extra step, but in my experience it's helped me out a lot. So okay guys, last but not least, what I do is I use the Lee factory crimp die. It's this product right here, Lee part number 90076, and it is the factory crimp die specifically designed for 357 SIG. I'm not very experienced at this, like I mentioned before, and I tend to have problems with either over flaring or not adding enough of a taper crimp when I seat the bullets, and this solves all of that for me. And let me just show you what to do here. How you set it up, according to the instructions, you raise the shell holder all the way up, and then you just seat this die down until it touches the shell holder, and then just add half a turn. You can always turn it more than a half turn if you want more of a crimp, but for our purposes, just a nice light to moderate taper crimp is plenty for this. And what I do is, for this last step, you take your completed cartridge, and I've shown you this in my other videos, and you just give it that nice little bit of a crimp, and it seals that bullet in really nicely. You know, 357 SIG does have some power behind it, and you don't want your bullets getting jarred loose while they're in the magazine or while they're feeding and chambering. Plus, it's supposed to make the starting pressure to get the bullet moving down the barrel, it's supposed to make that more consistent and uniform. But mostly for me, it helps me with chambering. And once I do this, what I'll typically do is get the barrel. This is my 357 SIG barrel for the P226. There you go. And usually, if you do it right, it'll just drop right in. Once it does that, I know I'm good to go. And you know what I was saying about not being very experienced and good at this, here's what happens. Here's an uncrimped round, and oh, see, I don't know, I gotta figure out what it's not that I gotta figure out what I'm doing wrong. I don't mind just conceding that part of it and using the crimping die. Have no problem with that at all. Anything that you can use to help you out and make things safe and more fun and more accurate, do it. I mean, especially when this thing costs, you know, maybe $20, $22 online. It's really worth it. So what I do at the last step is I use that factory crimp die, and then I know I'm good to go. And compare. Here in my left hand is my round, and here in my right hand is the factory round. The only way I can tell them apart is that the factory round has a gold colored primer. So if you're having any problems with 357 SIG, with reloading it and getting the rounds to chamber and feed properly, give this a try. It just might be what you need to get over that hump. Well, guys, I hope this video was helpful. I hope the gentleman that requested it can get some use out of it. Please always pay attention to safety. You know, do everything by the book. Don't go over the maximum charges unless you absolutely know what you're doing. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to type them in, and I thank you for watching. Rest in peace, little buddy.